Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about fiction. And this is fiction that I read in the past because I don't read fiction anymore. But when I was younger, I read a lot of books. Hundreds of novels. In the summertime, it would not be uncommon for me to read a book every single day of the week. I'd be going to the library every 3 to 4 days. Unfortunately, having to usually drag my sister with me. A task that I never really looked forward to and never enjoyed. And while I've been unpacking from my apartment to my new home, I've found some of the books that I kept. And I was quite surprised to see that I kept almost no fantasy whatsoever. Though I used to read quite a bit of it. And, you know, I was an Eddings fan. I read lots of fantasy and science fiction novels. And frankly, most of them slipped out of my mind fairly shortly after I read them. Bits and pieces were kept in my head, but not much. I read some horror, not a lot of it. Some of the authors that stuck in my mind, I recommend Clive Barker's short stories. His books of blood are excellent. The man, however, cannot carry a novel to save his life. The story just kind of goes, and it just disappears. Doesn't actually end. Just disappears. The best horror author I ever read, and I've spoken about her in the past and in a video dedicated to her, was Poppy Z, as in Zed, Bright, B-R-I-T-E. And she writes simply the best horror I ever read. I also really recommend Stephen Brust's Agyar. I also recommend all of Stephen Brust's fantasy. His Taltos books, The Phoenix Command, all of them are incredibly good. But I'm going to talk about the books I've got sitting right here in front of me. Now, one series I didn't save was the Horse Clan. In fact, I gave the Horse Clan series away earlier this year. It was by Robert Adams. And it's a post-apocalyptic story taking place in the United States. And it covers hundreds of years. The main character, in fact, is an immortal. And there are a number of immortals in the series. And from my best guesstimate, I've never researched it completely, but I think he was born sometime in the 17th or 18th century, lost his memory due to brain damage, but went on to create the Horse Clans and save humanity from destruction. And you have to take a big grain of salt with Robert Adams. He has some strong politics, which he beats you with like a baseball bat, and he is rampantly homophobic. If you can ignore that, and I could when I was younger, it's great stories. It's barbarian fiction at its best. Druce the Axe, whose author escapes me at the moment, is another series I really enjoyed. So I'm going to talk about some individual books I've read. The Bug Wars by Robert Asprin. Awesome science fiction that deals with no humans. It's all aliens, and I created an entire write-up for this, I think in first or second edition D&D, and I used these as the bad guys, some of them. Just awesome. The bugs and the lizards fighting each other, really a lot of fun. Infinity Hold by Barry B. Longyear, which deals with some prisoners that are essentially abandoned on a planet, much like the way we abandoned prisoners on Australia, and the society they create therein. Libertarians will really love it. Damnation Alley by Roger Zelazny. This is a very beat copy, and I have no idea where I got it from. But this, of course, is the book that the movie was based on, and I love that film. Andrea Norton's Daybreak 2550, which also was Starman's Son, perchance, was another title that may have been released in at one point. Great post-apocalyptic work, good use of psionics and some very subtle mutations. A whole lot of fun. One of the few pieces of fiction I kept, Megan Lindholm's Wizard of Pigeons. This is urban fantasy and highly recommended. Oh, Bridge of Birds is also excellent. Asian fantasy. I really love that. A Billion Days of Earth by Doris Piserchia. Piserchia. I have no idea how to say that. And it's post-apocalyptic, far in the future, long after humanity has disappeared and new creatures have evolved to take their place. Lord of the Flies by William Golding, of course. A book that had a major impact on me when I was in school, and I kept it. Andrea Norton's The Jargoon Pard. More science fiction, I don't remember a whole lot about this book, other than I enjoyed it thoroughly when I was younger. Ursula K. Le Guin's Always Coming Home. This is one of the best examples I have ever seen of a complete world. This book has poetry, songs, the culture. This is an entire culture in one book. A thoroughly enjoyable read. A nice look at a potential future to humanity in the United States. Much different than what we have now. Mark Jacobson's Gojira, which is the story of Godzilla from the point of view of the monster himself. Phase 4 by Barry N. Malzberg. Interesting. I never realized that his name was the same as the Malzberg virus. Yes, that's what's the film. This is the book that the film was based on, which I've reviewed on my channel in the past. Tales of Talislanta. This is fiction. Here we go. Fiction from the Talislanta role-playing game. I kept it for nostalgia reasons, really, no other reason. Shibumi by Trevnian, which is one of the best espionage books I ever read. And what's amazing about this, there's like 300 pages of character development. You don't get to the story until you've gone through 300 pages of character development. Some of the most detailed character development I've ever read. Very recommended for someone that really wants to know how to get deep into a character. Awesome story. William Goldman's The Princess Bride, which of course is a classic. The Copernicus Rebellion by Leo F. Frankowski. And this deals with... yeah, it's a weird alien kind of looking creature on the cover. This deals with a post-metallic world. With a world where nanotechnology has fundamentally changed everything. It's got a lot of politics, as does his Conrad Stargard series. Lots of politics, but still quite enjoyable. And lastly, as far as the single books go, Blood Music by Greg Bear. Now, this book changed my life. This gave me a view of the universe that no other book ever has. I think I may have read one other book by his, and it was okay. It didn't thrill me. But this book was a major impact on me. It is a story of an emergency intelligence, nanotechnology, sentient viri. It's just a fascinating book. And the cover says, a childhood's end for the 1980s. Compelling. And I would have to agree that it is, in fact, compelling. Then we have some light science fiction. Illegal Aliens by Nick Polata and Phil Foglio. Very funny. Lots of jokes. Good storyline. Full of aliens. It's a very space opera universe. Robert Asprin's Fool's Company and Fool's Paradise, both which are military fiction, but they're also humor, military fiction, science fiction. I thoroughly enjoyed them. And I discovered I have a buttload of Lovecraft. And some of these are from like the 60s. Like this one is from 62. This one right here with the splitting skull is from 65. Didn't know I had any ones that were really that old of Lovecraft, but I do. I also found some more that are still on my shelves that were gifts from friends, which I kept simply because they were gifts from friends. The Borderland series, and I think there may have been more of these out there. Here's the original cover, which I felt very compelling. And then we have Life on the Borders, Never, Never, and Elsewhere. And this is urban fantasy. Essentially a rift between our world and the world of the Fae opens in Los Angeles or San Francisco. And what happens to the world once this happens. The further you get away from the rift, the less power it has. The closer you get to the rift, the more power it has, and you can cross over under very certain special circumstances. But more importantly, the Fae can cross over into our world. And what happens in this world, which just happens one day, there's no real explanation, and how it changes the world. Really enjoyable. I thoroughly enjoyed all of the storylines in that. As far as series goes, I would also recommend Wild Cards. They're a series of both novels and short stories which deal with when superpowers come into our world, starting right at the end of World War II and moving forward through, I think, almost the year 2000. I'm not sure. They may still be making books for them. I highly recommend it. Is the Mutants and Mastermind Wild Card Supplement. Awesome stuff. Great reference if you like the series. And if you want to use the series as a Mutant and Mastermind setting, everything you need is right there. There's also a GURPS version of it, which is not quite as good in my opinion. Then we have this huge pile of books here, which are all based off of this character right here, Sten. Alan Cole and Chris Bunch. This is science fiction, military science fiction. And you really have to... I'm throwing off my light level. Something fierce with these books here, I think. Sorry about that. You really have to be into military science fiction to enjoy them. Otherwise, you're just not going to get into it. The Gurkhas show up, however, which that's kind of cool. Then we have L.E. Modestet Jr.'s The Silent Warrior, Dawn from a Distant Earth, and In Endless Twilight, which deals with a book, originally The Forever Hero, which I don't know where the Forever Hero is. It's somewhere in my collection, I think. And that is about a post-apocalyptic setting, a single man who is obviously some kind of mutant, who helps to save the Earth and found a dynasty of leaders who helped to save the entire human species from chaos and ruin, essentially. Really quite enjoyable. And then we have Steve Perry, an entire series of Steve Perry, starting with The Man Who Never Missed. Military, mostly martial arts science fiction in a very large universe, lots of aliens, cultures. So lots of philosophy dealing with the underpinnings of martial arts. If you liked the movie Circle of Iron, I think you'd like this series. All these light levels are all screwed up. I'm sorry about that, folks. S.M. Sterling's Draka series. Marching Through Georgia. Under the Yoke. Stone Dogs, which all take place in an alternative history from about the 19th century up through the 1970s and the 80s, and Drakon, which takes place in our era as the alternate world breaks into ours. Very good, depressing as all get out. So it's because essentially the fascists of this world win, and what I loved about the Drakon. About the Draka, that's what they eventually call themselves, the Dominion of the Draka. Besides its alternate history, which fascinates me, they're absolutely, flawlessly pragmatic. There are no politics in Draka. Everything they do is for the race, themselves. They subjugate the entire planet. Everyone that isn't Draka is a serf. You are either a serf or you are dead. And they have a perfectly pragmatic way of viewing the world, and it's horrible and terrifying and really efficient. Then we have Hero's Journey by Sterling E. Lanier, and the sequel, A Unforsaken Hero. Two of the best science fiction, post-apocalyptic books ever written, period, in the history of the world. They're just awesome. I highly recommend it. Then we have Robert Mason's Solo and Weapon. Do not confuse this with the piece of crap film done by Mario Van Peebles called Solo, which was based on this property. It has nothing to do with this story, really. These are great stories about an emergent and artificial intelligence in a robotic body and how it's trying to adapt and survive in our world. Then I have a bunch of Cyberpunk books. Mona Lisa Overdrive, Neuromancer, Snow Crash, Burning Chrome, Diamond Age. All very good cyberpunk books if you're into that genre. Then we have Frederick Pohl's Man Plus. I read the crap out of this book when I was younger. I must have read this 5 or 6 times. And the sequel Man Plus, Mars Plus, which is not nearly as good. But this is, if you want to know about what it's like for a person to go through the process of becoming a full conversion cyborg, Man Plus is the book you need to read. If you ever want to play that kind of a character in a science fiction game, read this book. It's required to really get into that character. Then we have Street Lethal, Fire Dance, and The Gorgon Child. And this is by Steve Barnes. He's probably more famous in many ways for the fact that he'd worked with other authors in the past. Niven, Pohl, and Barnes would work together, and in some ways those three authors combined became one functioning human being. But alone, Steve Barnes writes really good science fiction martial arts books. But when he combines himself with other authors, he really does an excellent job. I also discovered while doing this that I have 2 copies of Wolf World by Alan Cole and Chris Bunch. I have no idea why, but I do. And this is The Omega Cage by Steve Perry and Michael Reeves, which is prison break science fiction. And I have no idea why I kept it, because while it was entertaining, it wasn't that great. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe because it's got Steve Perry's name on it. I really like his Matador series, The Man Who Never Missed. I don't know. But if anybody wants either of these books, contact me. I will ship domestically. This is in the middle of a series, so it's... Oh, this is the middle of a series, rather. So that's not all that useful to you. This is a standalone book, so you can read that one, not a problem. And a lot of these books, I was just poking around on Amazon, are available dirt cheap. So if you want to read any of these things, you can go out and find them. They're well worth your time. I really enjoyed these books. In fact, this one right here, the Frederick Pohl Man Plus, I think is the second copy I have of it, because the first copy I read to death. It fell apart on me. But these I just kept for nostalgia purposes. They are books I love to read. I enjoyed them. They are good memories to me, and if I ever get in a mood to reread any fiction, these are the books that I'm going to turn to. I'm not going to be turning to a lot of probably new books, because I just don't have much interest in fiction any longer. I wouldn't mind walking down memory lanes potentially, but seeking new characters just isn't my thing. There aren't really any interesting new characters in my book. I've read James Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. I know that the heroes just keep appearing again and again from our collective unconscious. Jung is correct. So I'd be interested in hearing what other people have for their favorite books. Sorry this ran so long, but I wanted to try to get them all into one video. I also found a pocket version of Spider-Man comics, which made me smile. I don't know why I kept it, but I did. I'm going to keep it in my collection. So I'd be interested in hearing what your favorite books are, from science fiction, fantasy, whatever genre you happen to love. I'd like to know what they are. Share it with the people on the thread, and let them know what you read.